You want to see something big? Get your butt over here. Wait, am I recording? Uh-oh. Babe, go away. I've got to get this done. I'll show you later. That's awkward. Oh, wait. I got it. This is perfect. So, as I was saying, dear listener, you want to see something big? Morgan Stanley expects SpaceX to generate $3,300 billion in revenue by 2040. That is a very big number, but let's put that in context. Just asked my favorite Gigabrain AI, what are the largest companies by annual revenue today? Top 25. Plus, what would their revenue look like in 2030 and 2040, respectively, if their revenue compounded at 20% per annum between now and then? So here's Grok's response. What we've done is assume 20% compound annual growth rate on revenues for the largest 25 companies today by revenue all the way out till 2040. Bottom line, Amazon, Walmart, both over $9 trillion in revenues in 2040. Skipping ahead a little bit, Apple, Alphabet, Google's parent company, both over $5 trillion in annual revenue in 2040. And that would mean that SpaceX, if it were to do $3.3 trillion in revenue in 2040, would actually be number 21 on this list. So $3.3 trillion in annual revenue doesn't quite sound so crazy now, does it? It's kind of like Schrodinger's revenue estimate. It's both gigantic and simultaneously not actually that much. So if SpaceX fails to even crack top 20 global companies by revenue, of course, we're just using assumptions. Some of the companies on that list won't even be in business in 2040. Others will have appeared out of nowhere and shot up the list, but keeping things at a fairly simple back of the envelope type of example. If SpaceX hasn't even cracked the top 20 global companies by revenue in 2040, it could still be well in excess of $3 trillion in revenue. For the sake of example, what kind of a multiple might investors put on that $3.3 trillion of revenue? I don't know, let's use a magic number, pull it out of our asses. How about 20? Where do we end up? $66 trillion. So here's the real question. How close to the mark will Morgan Stanley have actually been with this estimate? Will they have been far too bullish and aggressive, pretty close, or far too bearish? That is the decatrillion-dollar question. We're now heading over to Doomberg for a segment entitled The Bull Case for SpaceX.
It's dynamic, right? Capital is flowing into the space economy. Just start with the basics of your thesis on SpaceX, right? How much in your target, your price target for this stock you assign to the space launch business with the bigger, longer-term AI story behind it?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. In terms of the specific question, we use the general formula Starlink, Starship equals Starbucks. You were just talking about Starbucks on the previous segment. Previously, we assigned a $300 billion valuation to SpaceX's launch business, which was only a fraction of the total roughly $2.2 trillion total company valuation. I think the company went public at around 1.8 or 1.9 trillion. But Starlink and the data center business right now are what's producing the Starbucks here, in that Starlink has quite honestly taken over the entire telecom industry. We have, for the past...
Can confirm, no lies detected. The telecommunications industry globally right now is being completely upended by Starlink. Starlink is the world's only ubiquitous, omnipresent home broadband and cellular service. The only constellation that's essentially covering every square inch of the entire planet, including the middle of oceans, deserts, mountaintops, deep in the jungles, with reliable, fast, high-speed internet and cell service. There's only one Starlink. Starlink is already at massive scale, well in excess of 10 million customers, growing a few million customers per quarter, and that rate's accelerating. Starlink is a predictable, compelling, growing money printer. No other company is capable of competing with Starlink. There's roughly 10,000 Starlink satellites in service today, in orbit, launched by SpaceX. No one else has the launch capability. So even if somebody wanted to try to compete with Starlink, they would need to go to SpaceX for their launches. Starlink alone today, in my opinion, is well and truly a multi-trillion-dollar business.
Decade covered satellite communications providers such as Viasat,
Right.
Iridium, GoGo, and AST Space Mobile. And Starlink has won a ton of customers across the in-flight connectivity sector, residential, and for data centers, it was widely reported that SpaceX won the leases with Anthropic and Google. So they're firing on all cylinders, or nearly all cylinders, I should say.
Louis, I'm sure you did, and many did, study the prospectus very closely. And all of those future business lines, be it orbital data center and things even more further afield on that, are predicated on SpaceX getting Starship A to work, be human payload rated, and be reusable.
Credit to Ed, the anchor here, for knowing what he's talking about. This is absolutely true. The next generation Starlink satellites require Starship. The orbital data centers require Starship, both too big to launch on a traditional Falcon 9 or even Falcon Heavy. So bottom line, Starship must work and be launching regularly, rapidly, reliably to unlock the next massive leg up in Starlink growth. Not to say that if Starship was completely unsuccessful or never worked, that Starlink wouldn't continue growing millions and millions and millions of additional customers every quarter. But as we know through disclosures, the next-gen Starlink satellites launched on Starship per Starship launch will put into orbit more than 20 times the amount of bandwidth per launch compared to the Starlink satellites on today's Falcon 9s. We're talking about a difference between adding a few million customers per quarter currently to many tens of millions of customers per quarter in the future. Even if Starship were a massive failure and, excuse the pun, never gets off the ground, never takes off, SpaceX would still be an incredible business. But Starship's obviously going to work. We've been watching the test flights, the progress that's being made. You don't need to be the sharpest tool in the shed to see what's already being done, to see how far along they are. All of that said, the one thing for long-term SpaceX investors to be paying attention to is progress on Starship.
Question to you and all of the sell side going forward is, every time there is a Starship test launch, how closely is that going to impact the stock and be tracked for its success?
Yeah, so they've done 12 Starship launches. I think they're going to do the 13th. And every time, they launch Starship, they learn something, and there's iterative improvement. So the goal here is for rapid reusability and full reusability over the next several years. So this isn't something that's expected in the next few months. And given how SpaceX is a full, decade ahead of the competition here, we don't think, the stock price is going to be, that sensitive for, each trial. We think, there will be learnings from each trial, and progress will be made in terms of developing the AI satellites, which are expected to debut in, I believe, the second half of 2028. So I don't think there's going to be very high sensitivity. I think there will be more sensitivity, if Google or Anthropic were to suggest that, they wanted to terminate their data center leases with SpaceX, given, the huge dollar volumes.
Right. Well, it was Musk in the first.
So on that last point, I tend to agree. My best guess would be a much more extreme reaction if companies like Google or Anthropic opted to shoot themselves in the dick and end their compute agreements with SpaceX AI, keeping in mind it was SpaceX AI themselves who requested the 90-day opt-out of the agreement, meaning either party could say, we'd like to terminate this agreement 90 days from now. Again, SpaceX asked for this. This was not a clause requested by Anthropic or Google, who are desperate to get their hands on and continue to have access to compute. As for Starship test flights and the stock potentially being sensitive, I tend to agree with Bro here. Now, of course, predicting what the stock will or won't do is brain dead, so I shouldn't be doing it. But I don't think most investors are going to see a Starship test flight, whether or not it involves a rapid, unscheduled disassembly and panic out of the stock, or see an extremely successful test flight and bet the farm on the company. I think most investors in SpaceX stock are well enough informed to know that the test flights won't always go off without a single hitch. They're tests for a reason. The only really negative signal would actually be if there was a very prolonged period of time in which there were no additional Starship test flights. Quick caveat, unless they're now mass producing Starships because the design is finalized.
Instance that was suggesting those were short term and sort of disputed the longer term nature of them anyway. Right. You also write about Blue Origin in the private markets. What did that signal to you? And how do you see the gap between SpaceX and Blue right now?
Yeah, so, I mean, quite honestly, in terms of New Glenn, it has launched 3 times, and the prior mission with AST Space Mobile didn't work out very well. Whereas SpaceX has launched its Falcon 9 rocket over 650 times. So, the scorecard, 650 to 3. And SpaceX is already on Starship, which is, a generation ahead of New Glenn. So I think there is, an appetite for a competitor to Starship and Falcon 9 and Blue Origin, as well as Rocket Lab. They represent, the most, competent and capable and innovative competitors. But the fact remains, SpaceX has a 90% plus market share. They're a decade ahead. And so, the launch business for SpaceX should be valued at more than triple, the rest of the market combined.
Louis, we're running short of time here, but how do you model for Elon Musk key man risk?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You would say Elon Musk is also, the key man, like virtue here, in that Elon Musk is the greatest, innovator of this century, and we think Elon Musk is, highly aligned to the company. So, we don't consider it a major risk here. He sleeps on the floor at Starbase. He puts his heart and soul into, these business endeavors. So, we think he's fully aligned, and, he's going to be on board. And SpaceX has a very deep bench with Gwynne Shotwell and, Mila Kusto, Brett Johnson as the CFO, who's awesome. So, they have a very deep bench, and we got to meet everybody at Starbase and in Hawthorne.
The way I think about Elon Musk's involvement, his value, the quote-unquote key man risk at both Tesla and SpaceX is actually extremely simple. If Musk is involved, actively leading the companies, given his historical track record, multiple decades across many domains and technologies, of envisioning and pursuing new opportunities that no one saw coming, of producing extremely dominant, untouchable moats, it's very easy to think about this. You simply must add a Musk multiple to however you value a company while he is there. This is not something that a traditional investor will learn when they're being taught the rules of investing. But this is a special case. Whatever value you determine, SpaceX or Tesla, while Musk is there leading the company, you got to have a multiple on the final valuation based on Musk's leadership, vision, execution, ability, and track record. If you want to model what the company will be worth without his leadership, just remove the multiple. Adding a special Musk multiple is certainly unconventional, but unconventional is the name of the game with Elon Musk. Everything he's ever done has been outside the box. So why wouldn't a diligent investor also think about his involvement and the value he adds as a leader to these companies in a similarly unconventional manner? Owning an Elon Musk-led company entitles you to free options on any potential future ideas Musk might come up with. That has to be worth something. Thanks for watching. If you appreciate the content and want to support the channel, check out the links below where you can get early access to daily videos, unlock hundreds of exclusive pieces of content, and plenty more. AG1 has been part of my daily health protocol for almost half a decade. It's packed full of vitamins and minerals and helps me fill in nutritional gaps while supporting energy, digestion, and immune function. It also has prebiotics and probiotics to promote gut health. I take my health very seriously, and so should you. Try AG1 today by visiting drinkag1.com/SMR or click the link in the pinned comment and enjoy a free welcome kit with vitamin D3 plus K2 and AG1 travel packs. That's drinkag1.com/SMR.